Later that day, Amina saw Layla sitting alone in the library. She decided to take a risk. "Layla, we need to talk," Amina said firmly. Layla looked up, startled. "About what?" "Brian and the payments," Amina said, placing the notebook on the table. "We know he's blackmailing people." Layla's eyes widened in fear. She grabbed the notebook and flipped through it. This is bad," she whispered. "Tell us what's going on," Amina urged. "We can help." Layla hesitated before finally speaking. "Brian found out about my family. My father is in trouble with the law, and if people know, it will destroy my reputation and future. He's using this to get money from me and others." "We'll stop him," Amina said. "But we need a plan." Fatima nodded. "And we'll make sure everyone knows the truth." Layla looked at them with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. That evening, the girls came up with a plan. They would set a trap for Brian and record him admitting everything. They decided to meet at the baobab tree at midnight. Layla would act like she was bringing him more money while Amina and Fatima hid nearby with a phone to record. At midnight, the girls were ready. Layla stood under the tree, holding an envelope. Brian arrived, looking smug. "Do you have the money?" Brian asked. "Yes," Layla said, handing him the envelope. "But I need to know this ends here." "It ends when I say it ends," Brian replied. "Unless you want everyone to know your secret." From the bushes, Amina and Fatima recorded everything. Their hearts raced as Brian counted the fake money in the envelope. "Got it," Amina whispered. "Let's go." As they started to leave, Brian turned and saw them. "Hey," he shouted, running after them. The girls sprinted back towards the dorms, clutching the phone tightly. They had the evidence, but now they needed to stay safe. Amina and Fatima stayed up all night, watching the video they had recorded. It was clear proof of Brian's blackmail. They knew they couldn't keep this a secret forever. But who could they trust? The school principal, Mr. Kamau, was strict but fair. He seemed like the right person to tell. "What if Brian denies it?" Fatima asked nervously. "He won't be able to." "We have proof," Amina replied, holding up the phone. "Let's go early tomorrow before classes start." The next morning, they headed to the principal's office. Mr. Kamau listened carefully as they explained everything and showed him the video. "This is serious," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I'll call Brian in and investigate further. You girls did the right thing by coming to me." Relieved but still nervous, Amina and Fatima went to class. They couldn't wait to see what would happen next. During lunch, everyone noticed Brian being called to the principal's office. Whispers spread like wildfire. "What did he do this time?" someone asked. Brian returned an hour later, looking angry and pale. He avoided everyone and sat alone in the corner. Amina and Fatima exchanged glances. Had Mr. Kamau confronted him? Layla approached them quietly. Did you tell him?" she asked. Amina nodded. "Don't worry, Layla. Everything will be okay." But Layla didn't look relieved. "Brian has friends," she whispered. "If they find out you exposed him, they might come after you." Fatima's face turned pale. "What do you mean?" Layla shook her head. "Just be careful." That evening, Amina found a note under her pillow. It was written in bold letters. "Stay out of this, or you'll regret it." Her hands trembled as she showed it to Fatima. "They know it was us," she said. "We need to tell Mr. Kamau again," Fatima replied. "This is serious." But Amina wasn't sure. What if it makes things worse? We need proof of who wrote this. That night, the girls stayed up, keeping an eye on the dorm. They wanted to see if anyone tried to leave another note. Around midnight, they heard footsteps outside. Quietly, they peered out the window and saw Brian's closest friend, Musa, sneaking around with a flashlight. "He's the one," Fatima whispered. The next morning, Amina and Fatima confronted Musa in the hallway. "Why are you leaving notes in our room?" Amina demanded. Musa looked shocked but quickly covered it up. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, smirking. Fatima pulled out her phone. "We saw you last night. We can tell Mr. Kamal." Musa's face changed. "Fine," he hissed. "But you don't know what you're getting into. Brian has powerful connections." "We're not afraid of Brian," Amina said firmly. "And you should stop helping him before you get in trouble too." Musa didn't reply. He turned and walked away, but they could tell he was nervous. Later that day, Layla came to Amina and Fatima with a surprising offer. "I want to help," she said. "Brian has hurt too many people. We need to stop him together." "What changed your mind?" Fatima asked. Layla looked determined. "I'm tired of being afraid. If we work together, we can make sure he doesn't do this to anyone else." The three girls sat down and planned their next steps. They decided to gather more evidence and find other students Brian had blackmailed. With enough proof, they could ensure he couldn't escape punishment. "We're stronger together," Amina said, and for the first time, they all felt hopeful.